The alarm woke Hana Kim at 3 in the morning. She rolled out of her bunk aboard the monitoring station and pulled on her uniform. Her fingers fumbled with the buttons. She was tired, but alarms meant something important was happening. The monitoring room was cold and dark, except for the blue glow of screens. Her supervisor waited by the main console, his face worried. "We picked up something strange," he said. "Take a look." Hana slid into her chair and studied the data. The signal came from deep space, from a region called the Veil Nebula. It was 47 light-years away. But this was not a normal signal. It pulsed with patterns that made her heart beat faster. "This is not natural," she whispered. She pulled up more data and started working. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. The signal used quantum entanglement. That was technology. Advanced technology. But it was damaged. Broken into pieces. Hana spent hours putting those pieces together like a puzzle. When she finally saw what it said, her hands started shaking. "Sir, you need to call Earth Command. Now. Now." Within 6 hours, Captain Minho Park received orders to assemble a crew. He stood in his quarters aboard the Times Horizons Promise *, reading the message 3 times. An alien distress signal. A cry for help from a species humanity had never met. Minho was 42 years old. He had spent 20 years in space, but he had never encountered alien life. No human had. There were theories, hopes, and dreams, but no proof. Until now. "This changes everything," he said to himself. He called his senior officers to the briefing room. Hana Kim arrived first. She was young, only 28, but she was the best communications expert in the fleet. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun. She carried a data pad filled with her translations. Tae-hyun Lee came next. He was the chief engineer, a quiet man with sharp eyes who could fix anything. Then came Dr. Sora Choi, the xenobiologist. She had spent her whole career studying the possibility of alien life. Her hands trembled with excitement as she sat down. "Show them what you found," Minho said to Hana. She activated the holographic display. Numbers and symbols filled the air between them. "The signal contains 3 main parts," Hana explained. "First, mathematical sequences, universal constants. They are trying to prove they are intelligent. Second, biological data, chemical formulas, DNA-like structures, but different. And third, coordinates. They are telling us where they are." "What about the distress part?" Taehyun asked. Hana touched another control. A wave pattern appeared. "This repeats every 12 seconds. It is the same pattern humans use for emergency broadcasts. They studied our signals. They know how to ask us for help." Sora leaned forward. "What else does the biological data tell us?" "They breathe methane, not oxygen," Hana said. "Their chemistry is completely different from ours. But the signal also includes casualty numbers." She paused. "Billions. They have lost billions." The room went silent. Minho stood up. "Earth Command has given us permission to investigate. But we will be alone out there. No backup, no support. It will take us 3 months to reach them. Even at full FTL speed." "Are we sure this is not a trap?" Taehyun asked. "We have never met aliens before. What if they are hostile?" "Their signal has been broadcasting for weeks," Hana said. "It is weak. Fading. If this is a trap, it is a very expensive one." Sora shook her head. "I do not think it is a trap. The biological data is too detailed, too specific. These beings are dying. They need help." Minho looked at each of them. "I will not order anyone to come. This is dangerous. This is unknown. But someone is calling for help, and we are the only ones who heard them. I am going. Who is with me?" All 3 raised their hands without hesitation. Over the next 2 days, the Times Horizons Promise Times prepared for departure. The ship was large. Built for deep space exploration, it carried 200 crew members, enough supplies for 2 years, and the most advanced technology Earth could build. Minho walked through the ship, checking every section. In the medical bay, he met Yuna Shin, the chief medical officer. She was organizing supplies, preparing for the unknown. "We have no idea what alien biology looks like," she said. "I am packing everything. Antibiotics, antivirals, radiation treatments, surgical tools, everything. Do your best," Minho told her. "That is all anyone can ask." In the security section, Lieutenant Commander Junho Kang was training his team. Junho was a big man with a serious face. He trusted nothing and prepared for everything. "Captain, are we really doing this?" Junho asked. "Flying into unknown space for aliens? We have never met?" "Yes," Minho said simply. "Then we will be ready," Junho replied. "For anything." The night before departure, Minho could not sleep. He stood in the observation deck, looking at Earth below. The planet was blue and green and beautiful. Humanity had almost destroyed it once, hundreds of years ago. War, pollution, greed. But humans had learned. They had changed. They had built something better. Now they were going to help someone else. "Captain?" Hana had entered quietly. "I have been thinking about the signal." "What about it?" "They could have called anyone. The signal went in all directions. But we were the only ones who answered." She looked at Earth. "What does that say about everyone else out there?" Minho considered this. Maybe they did not hear it. Or maybe they did not care. We will find out eventually. The next morning, the Times Horizon's Promise Times detached from the station. Minho sat in the captain's chair, surrounded by his crew. On the main screen, Earth grew smaller. "All systems green," Taehyun reported. "FTL drive charging. Coordinates locked," Hana said. "Veil Nebula, Talaxis system. All personnel, prepare for FTL jump," Minho announced. "We are about to make history." The ship vibrated as the engines built power. Space itself began to bend around them. Then, in a flash of light, the Times Horizon's Promise Times vanished. It raced through folded space, carrying 200 humans toward a dying world and an alien species that needed them. In the crew quarters, most people entered cryosleep chambers. They would sleep for 3 months, while the ship traveled. Only essential personnel remained awake to monitor systems. Minho stayed awake the first week. He walked the empty corridors, thinking about what awaited them. Were the aliens still alive? What had killed billions of them? Could humans really help, or were they flying toward their own deaths? He did not have answers. But he knew one thing with certainty. Someone had called for help, and humanity had answered. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The Times Horizon's Promise Times flew on through the dark, carrying hope toward the unknown. 3 months passed in the blink of an eye for most of the crew. They slept in cryosleep while the ship crossed impossible distances. But for the few who stayed awake, it was the longest 3 months of their lives. When the Times Horizon's Promise Times dropped out of FTL speed, alarms began to sound. Minho was already on the bridge. He had been waiting for this moment, unable to sleep despite his exhaustion. "Wake everyone up," he ordered. "We have arrived." Throughout the ship, cryosleep chambers opened. People woke up slowly, confused and cold. Hana was one of the first to reach the bridge. She looked at the main screen and gasped. The planet was there, exactly where the signal had said. But it was surrounded by debris. Thousands of pieces of metal floated in orbit. Dead satellites. Destroyed stations. The remains of whatever defense the aliens had built. "What happened here?" Hana whispered. Taehyun worked at his console. "Scanning now. The debris is at least 3 years old. Some kind of battle? No, wait. No weapons damage. These things just stopped working." Sora focused her instruments on the planet below. I am reading the atmosphere. It is mostly methane and nitrogen, just like the signal said. But there is something else. Something wrong. What is it? Minho asked. There are crystal formations in the air. Millions of them. They are growing, spreading, and they are consuming the organic compounds in the atmosphere. Sora's voice shook. Captain, this planet is dying. Minho sat forward in his chair. Can we land? There are still some active signals on the surface, Hana said. Sealed structures. Biodomes, I think. I am picking up life signs inside them. Lots of them. Send them a message, Minho ordered. Tell them we are here to help. Hana's fingers flew across her controls. She sent the message in multiple formats, using the same mathematical language the aliens had used. Then, they waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. 15. Captain, I am receiving a response, Hana said finally. It is audio. Translating now. The bridge speakers crackled to life. A voice spoke in a language that sounded like wind chimes and thunder mixed together. But Hana's computer translated it into words they could understand. Human vessel. You came. We did not believe anyone would come. Minho stood up. This is Captain Minho Park of the Earth ship Times Horizon's Promise *. We received your distress call. We are here to help. What happened to your world? Cheller. 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 There was a long pause. Then the voice spoke again, heavy with sadness. I am Velrin, leader of what remains of the Rylon people. 3 years ago, we made a terrible mistake. We were mining an ancient asteroid. Inside it, we found crystals. Beautiful crystals. We brought them to our world to study them. But they were alive. They began to grow. To spread. We call it the gray bloom. Sora was already pulling up data, analyzing everything. Captain, I need to see this pathogen. Can we send a team down? Velrin, Minho said. We would like to land and examine the situation. Will you allow us? Another long pause. You should leave. Everyone else did. The other species we contacted said we were already dead. They said to save themselves the trouble. Why did you come? Minho thought about that question. Why had they come? It would have been easier to ignore the signal. Safer to stay home. Because someone asked for help, Minho said simply. That is reason enough. Velrin made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. Then land. Come see what we have become. Perhaps you will understand why there is no hope. The Times Horizon's Promise Times descended through the atmosphere. The crew watched through the windows as they entered the cloud layer. Gray crystals floated everywhere, catching the light. They were beautiful and terrible at the same time. The ship landed near the largest biodome. It was huge, covering what must have been an entire city. But through the transparent walls, they could see the gray crystals covering everything outside. Buildings, streets, vehicles. Minho assembled his landing team. Sora and her science team would examine the pathogen. Yuna would assess the medical situation. Junho and his security team would ensure their safety. Minho assembled his landing team. And Hana would help with communication. They wore environmental suits. The methane atmosphere would kill them instantly without protection. As they stepped off the ship, the ground crunched under their feet. Everything was covered in a thin layer of crystal dust. The biodome's airlock opened for them. Inside, they went through a decontamination process that burned away any crystals on their suits. Then, they entered the dome itself. The Rylans were waiting for them. They were tall and thin, with skin that shimmered like oil on water. They had 4 arms and large eyes that reflected light like mirrors. They moved gracefully, like dancers, but their bodies showed signs of stress. They were thin, too thin, starving. Velrin stepped forward. He was larger than the others, with markings on his skin that might have been scars or tattoos. Welcome to all that remains of Rylon Prime, he said. 4 billion of us lived here once. Now we are 200 million. Scattered across 12 biodomes. We have maybe 6 months of supplies left. The gray bloom grows faster every day. Sora approached one of the dome walls. Outside, the crystals were thick, pressing against the transparent material. How does it work? The pathogen? A smaller Rylon stepped forward. I am Ashara. I sent the distress signal. I am a scientist. She gestured to a display. The gray bloom is silicon-based. It feeds on organic matter. Any organic matter. It breaks down the molecules and converts them into more crystals. It spreads through the air, through water, through soil. We have tried everything to stop it. Chemicals, heat, cold, radiation. Nothing works. It adapts to everything. Yuna was examining the Rylons with her medical scanner. How is it affecting your people? Our immune systems are fragile, Ashara explained. We evolved on a gentle world. No harsh diseases. No aggressive pathogens. The gray bloom is destroying our bodies from the inside. Anyone exposed dies within hours. Sora knelt down and took a sample of the crystal dust. I need to study this. Understand it. There has to be a way. Velrin made that sound again, the one between a laugh and a sob. 30 of our best scientists have been trying for 3 years. What can you do that we could not? Minho looked at the Rylon leader. We are humans. We do not give up. Ever. Our history is full of impossible problems that we solved anyway. Why? Velrin asked. Why do you care about us? You do not know us. We are nothing to you, Hana spoke up. You asked for help. That makes you something to us. It makes you people who need help. That is all we need to know. Velrin stared at her for a long moment. Then he looked at Minho. I do not understand your species, but I am too desperate to question it. Do what you can. We have nothing left to lose. The human team set up a laboratory inside the biodome. Sora and Ashara worked together, sharing data. Despite the language barrier and the difference in biology, they found a rhythm. Science was universal. Meanwhile, Yuna helped treat sick Rylons. She could not cure them, but she could make them more comfortable. She learned quickly that Rylons had a strong sense of family. They stayed with their sick until the end. Junho explored the biodome, mapping it out. He found that the Rylons had organized everything efficiently. Food production, water recycling, air purification. They were survivors, doing everything they could with what little they had. That night, the human team gathered in their temporary quarters. They were exhausted, but could not sleep. This is worse than I thought, Sora said. The gray bloom is like nothing I have ever seen. It is almost like it was designed to destroy organic life. Can we stop it? Minho asked. Sora hesitated. I do not know, but I am going to try. Some. Outside the biodome, the gray bloom continued to grow. The crystals spread across the dead world, beautiful and deadly. And inside the dome, humans and Rylons worked together, searching for hope in the darkness. For 2 weeks, Sora barely slept. She spent every moment studying the gray bloom, running tests, trying different approaches. Nothing worked. Every chemical they tried, every treatment, every method, failed. The crystals adapted. They changed. They survived. Ashara worked beside her, sharing everything the Rylons had learned. The two scientists developed a friendship despite their differences. They understood each other through their shared frustration and determination. We tried fire, Ashara said one day, showing Sora old data. We burned entire forests. The crystals just grew back from the ash. What about biological weapons? Sora asked. Did you try using other organisms against it? Ashara made a gesture that meant sadness. Our world had no aggressive life. Everything here lived in balance. We had no diseases, No parasites. Nothing that could fight something like this. Sora sat back in her chair. An idea was forming in her mind, but it seemed crazy. Too simple. Too obvious. She left the laboratory and went to find Yuna in the medical center. Her friend was treating a young Rylon who had been exposed to crystal dust. The Rylon's skin was turning gray, hardening. "Is there anything you can do?" Sora asked quietly. Yuna shook her head. "I can slow it down, but I cannot stop it. Their immune systems have no defense." She finished her treatment and stepped away. "What do you need?" I need to see our waste recycling system. The one on the ship." Yuna looked confused. "Why? Just trust me." They returned to the Times Horizons Promise *. Sora went straight to the waste management section. Taehyun found them there, looking puzzled. "What are you doing?" he asked. Sora was taking samples from the bacterial cultures that broke down human waste. "Earth life," she said. "It is aggressive, competitive. It evolved on a planet full of challenges. Bacteria, viruses, fungi. They all fight for survival." "I still do not understand," Taehyun said. "The Rylans evolved on a gentle world. But Earth was never gentle. Our bacteria are survivors. They eat anything. They adapt. They compete. What if we fight the gray bloom with Earth bacteria?" Yuna's eyes went wide. "That is crazy. We have no idea how Earth bacteria will react to alien biology." "Exactly," Sora said. "But that is also why it might work. The gray bloom has never encountered life like ours. It adapted to everything on this planet because it understands this planet's biology. But Earth biology is completely different." She ran back to the laboratory with her samples. Ashara watched as Sora set up a new experiment. She took crystal samples and exposed them to different Earth bacteria. For hours, nothing happened. Then, slowly, one of the samples began to change. The gray crystals started to break down, turning into dust. "It is working," Sora whispered. "Look, Ashara. The bacteria are metabolizing the crystals." Ashara came closer. "How is this possible? Earth has a lot of silicon in its soil. Our bacteria evolved to process silicon compounds. The gray bloom is silicon-based. The bacteria think it is food. They ran more tests. Some bacteria worked better than others. Some had no effect at all. But there were several strains that consistently broke down the crystals." Sora called Minho to the laboratory. She showed him the results, barely able to contain her excitement. "We might have a solution," she said. "But there is a problem." "What problem?" Minho asked. "We need to test it on a larger scale. And we need to make sure it will not harm the Rylons. Earth bacteria are aggressive. If they start attacking Rylon biology, we could make things worse." A young ensign had joined them. Her name was Jiwon Nam, and she was the ship's botanist. She had been studying the Rylon ecosystem. "I might be able to help with that," Jiwon said. "I have been analyzing Rylon plant life. Their chemistry is completely different from Earth plants. Different enough that Earth bacteria should not see them as food. They are too alien." "Should not?" Ashara asked. "That is not certain." "No," Jiwon admitted. "It is not certain. We would need to test it." They spent 3 more days running tests. They exposed Rylon tissue samples to the bacteria. They monitored every reaction, every change. The results were better than they hoped. The bacteria ignored Rylon biology completely. They only consumed the gray bloom crystals. But then they discovered something else. After the bacteria finished eating the crystals, they converted the material into nutrient-rich compounds. The dead soil became fertile again. "This could save our world," Ashara said quietly. "Not just stop the gray bloom, but heal the damage it caused." Sora nodded. "But we need a way to spread the bacteria across the entire planet. The biodomes are safe, But outside. She gestured to the gray wasteland, visible through the walls. Taehyun had been listening to everything. I can help with that. Our ship has terraforming nanobots. We use them to prepare planets for colonization. They are designed to spread biological materials across large areas. How large? Minho asked. A whole planet, if needed. They brought Velrin to see the results. The Rylon leader watched the demonstrations in silence. He saw the bacteria break down crystals. He saw the Rylon tissue remain unharmed. He saw the fertile soil that remained. You really think this will work? Velrin asked. We cannot be completely certain, Sora admitted. But our tests show it should work. The bacteria are effective against the gray bloom and safe for your people. Velrin turned to look at his city, sealed inside its dome. We are dying slowly in here. If we do nothing, we have maybe 5 months left. 5 months? We have maybe 5 months left. But if this goes wrong, if your bacteria harm us, we could all die much faster. Minho stepped forward. I understand your fear. I do. But I have seen what humans can do when we refuse to give up. We have faced extinction ourselves. More than once. Plagues, wars, climate disasters. We survived because we were willing to try impossible solutions. And if you fail, Velrin asked, then we fail together. Minho said, but at least we tried. Humans have a saying, it is better to die fighting than to give up without a struggle. Velrin looked at each of the humans. Sora, Yuna, Taehyun, Jiwon, Minho. They were so different from Rylons. Shorter, stockier, adapted to a harsh world. But their eyes held something Velrin had not seen in years. Hope. I need to discuss this with the other dome leaders, Velrin said. This decision affects everyone. The debate lasted for 2 days. Some Rylon leaders were desperate enough to try anything. Others were afraid, worried that trusting aliens would lead to an even worse disaster. But in the end, they agreed to a test. We have a small dome, Velrin explained. It failed 6 months ago. Everyone inside died. The gray bloom has completely covered it. If your solution works there, if it clears that dome without damaging the structure, then we will consider using it on the whole planet. That is fair, Minho said. They prepared carefully. Sora selected the most effective bacterial strains and grew them in large quantities. Taehyun programmed the nanobots to spread the bacteria evenly through the failed dome. Junho's security team made sure everything was safe. On the day of the test, both humans and Rylons gathered to watch. The failed dome sat on a hill, completely gray, like a tomb. Taehyun activated the nanobots. Thousands of tiny machines, invisible to the naked eye, flew into the dome. They carried the Earth bacteria with them, spreading it everywhere. At first, nothing happened. Hours passed. The watchers grew restless. Then, slowly, the gray began to change. The crystals started to crack, to crumble. They turned into fine dust that drifted down to the ground. Where they fell, the dust turned dark and rich. By the next morning, the dome was clear. The crystals were gone. The ground was covered in dark, fertile soil. Plants that had been encased in crystal were free again. Some were dead, but some had survived. They were already starting to grow again. Velrin stood at the dome entrance, staring in disbelief. It worked, he whispered. It actually worked. Ashara was crying. Rylons cried differently than humans, their tears like liquid silver. We can go home, she said. We can actually go home. Minho put his hand on Velrin's shoulder. Are you ready to save your world? Velrin looked at him. Yes. Yes. We are ready. The operation began at dawn. Minho named it Operation Renewal. It was a good name, Velrin thought. a name full of hope. The Times Horizon's promised times rose into the sky, carrying millions of nanobots and billions of bacteria. All across the planet, Rylons watched from their biodomes. This was their last chance. If it failed, they would die slowly in their sealed cities. If it succeeded, they would reclaim their world. Tae-hyun sat at the engineering controls. His hands were steady, but his heart raced. Deploying first wave of nanobots. Target: Northern continent. The nanobots spread out like invisible rain. They carried the Earth bacteria deep into the atmosphere, into the soil, into the water. Everywhere the gray bloom had spread, the bacteria followed. Sora monitored the biological readings from the ship's laboratory. Bacterial activity confirmed. They are feeding on the crystals. Rate of consumption is even faster than in our tests. Why faster? Ashara asked. She was on the ship too, watching everything with wide eyes. Competition, Sora explained. In our tests, the bacteria were alone. Out here, different strains are competing with each other. They are working harder, faster. It is what Earth life does best. Fight to survive. In the biodomes below, Rylons pressed against the transparent walls. They watched the gray crystals that had surrounded them for so long. At first, nothing seemed to change. Minutes passed like hours. Then someone shouted, "Look, the crystals! They are breaking." It started small. A few cracks appearing in the crystal layer. Then more. The cracks spread like lightning across the gray surface. The crystals began to crumble, falling away in sheets. Yuna was in one of the biodomes, helping to monitor Rylon health. All around her, Rylons were cheering. Their voices sounded like musical instruments, rising in harmony. Some were crying, some were laughing, some were doing both. An old Rylon approached her. He was very thin, very weak. He had been sick for a long time. "I never thought I would see the ground again," he said. "I thought I would die in this dome." Yuna took his hand. "You are going to see much more than the ground. You are going to see your world heal." The Times Horizon's promised times continued its work. Taehyun sent nanobots to the southern continent, then the eastern islands, then the western plains. Each time, the bacteria went to work, eating the crystals, converting them to soil, but not everything went smoothly. On the third day, Narration, the tactical officer, spotted a problem. "Captain, we have debris on a collision course with the ship. Old satellite fragments." Minho checked the readings. The debris was from the dead satellites they had seen when they first arrived. The ship's movement through the atmosphere had disturbed their orbit. "Can we avoid it?" he asked. "Not without stopping the deployment," Nari said. "And if we stop now, we will lose momentum. The bacteria need to be spread quickly, before the gray bloom can adapt. Then we do not stop," Minho said. "Nari, take manual control. Guide us through." Nari's fingers flew across the controls. The ship twisted and turned, dodging pieces of metal and broken technology. Some pieces came very close. The crew could hear them scraping against the hull. "Almost through," Nari said. Sweat ran down her face. A large piece of debris appeared directly ahead. There was no time to turn. "Brace for impact," Nari shouted. The debris hit the ship's shield. The whole vessel shook. Alarms blared, but the shield held. "Damage report," Mingyu ordered. "Shield at 60%, Taehyun called out. "Hull integrity maintained. We can continue." Minho let out a breath he did not know he was holding. "Good work, Nari. Continue the deployment." Down on the planet, the transformation continued. The gray wasteland was turning dark and brown. In some places, the first hints of green were appearing. Plants that had been dormant, waiting, now sensed that it was safe to grow again. Minji Bei, one of the shuttle pilots, flew low over the surface with a science team. They took samples, monitoring the bacteria's progress. "This is incredible," said Hyuncho, a biologist. "The bacteria are not just killing the gray bloom. They are rebuilding the ecosystem." creating conditions for life to return. How long until it is safe for the Rylands to leave the domes? Minji asked. At this rate? Maybe a week. The bacteria work fast. Back in the main biodome, Velrin stood with Minho, watching the view screens. They showed images from all over the planet. Everywhere, the gray was disappearing. I owe you an apology, Velrin said. For what? When you first arrived, I did not trust you. I thought you would leave. Like the others. I thought maybe you had come to study us, to watch us die. I am sorry for doubting you. Minho shook his head. You had every reason to doubt. We were strangers. But that is the thing about humanity. We do not just help our friends. We help anyone who needs it. Why? Velrin asked. What makes your species this way? Minho thought about that. Maybe it is because we almost destroyed ourselves once. Long ago, humans were divided. We fought each other over everything. We nearly made Earth uninhabitable. But we learned. We learned that we are stronger together. That helping others helps ourselves. That kindness is not weakness. Velrin was quiet for a moment. We Rylands have never known conflict. We evolved on a peaceful world, and we built a peaceful civilization. We thought that made us advanced. But when disaster came, we had no strength to fight it. You humans, you grew up fighting, and that made you strong. Not just strong, Minho said. Determined. We do not give up. Ever. On the 6th day, the gray bloom was almost completely gone. Across the planet, only small patches remained. The bacteria were relentless, consuming every last crystal. Sora ran final tests on the air quality. It is safe, she announced. The atmosphere is clean. No more crystal particles. The Rylands can leave the domes. Velrin made the announcement to all the biodomes. My people, after 3 long years, we are free. We can go home. The airlocks opened slowly. Ryland stepped out carefully, afraid to believe it was real. They touched the ground with their long fingers. They looked up at the sky, seeing clouds instead of gray crystal dust. Children ran outside. They had spent their whole lives in the domes. They had never felt wind on their skin, never smelled the air of their own world. Now they laughed and played and explored. An elderly Rylon walked to a patch of ground where her home had once stood. It was gone now, consumed by the gray bloom. But the soil was rich and dark. She knelt down and planted a seed she had saved for 3 years, hoping for this moment. Grow, she whispered to it. Grow, and be strong. The human crew watched from the Times Horizon's Promise asterisk. They had worked hard for this. Days without sleep, constant worry, moments of fear. But seeing the Rylons return to their world made it all worthwhile. Yuna wiped tears from her eyes. We did it. We actually saved them. Junho, the Sirius security chief, was smiling. I did not think it was possible. But I am glad I was wrong. Taehyun looked at his hands. These hands had programmed the nanobots, had guided them across a planet, had helped save billions of lives. I am going to remember this moment forever, he said. Jiwon, the young botanist, was already thinking ahead. We should help them plant new forests. I can show them which plants will grow best in the renewed soil. On the last day, the humans and Rylons gathered for a ceremony. Velrin stood before his people and the human crew. Today, we honor those who answered our call, Velrin said. The Terrans came when no one else would. They risked everything to save strangers. From this day forward, they will be known as the saviors of the pale moon. The Rylands made a sound together, a harmonious note that filled the air. It was their highest honor, their greatest thanks. Minho stepped forward. We did not do this for honor. We did it because it was right. But we are grateful for your friendship. You taught us something too. You taught us that even in the darkest moments, life finds a way. You survived for 3 years, waiting for help. That took tremendous courage. Ashara approached Sora. The two scientists had become close friends during the crisis. Will you stay? Ashara asked. Help us rebuild? Sora wanted to say yes. But she looked at Minho, and he shook his head gently. We cannot stay, Sora said. There are others out there who need help. But we will come back. I promise. We will visit and see how your world has healed. That night, the Times Horizon's Promise Times prepared to depart. The Rylons gathered to watch them leave. The ship's engines glowed bright blue against the night sky. Inside the ship, Minho sat in the captain's chair. Take us home, he said. As they rose into space, Hana looked back at the planet below. It was still mostly brown. Still healing. But there were patches of green now. Life returning. They are going to be okay, she said. Yes, Minho agreed. They are going to be okay. 6 months passed. The Times, Horizon's Promise Times, had returned to Earth, and the crew had tried to return to normal life. But nothing felt normal anymore. They had changed. The galaxy had changed. Hana sat in her apartment, watching the news. Every channel showed the same story. The Rylons had sent their account of what happened to every species they could contact. They broadcast it across the galaxy, telling everyone how humanity had saved them. The reactions were mixed. Some species were impressed. Others were skeptical. Many were simply shocked that anyone had answered the Rylon distress call at all. The Rylons had been considered a lost cause. A sad story. A warning about the dangers of space exploration. But humanity had proven them wrong. Hana's communicator buzzed. It was Minho. Turn on the Galactic Assembly channel. You need to see this. She switched channels. The Galactic Assembly was the closest thing the galaxy had to a united government. Representatives from dozens of species met there to discuss trade, territory, and treaties. Humans had never been invited. Earth was too new, too unknown, too insignificant. But today, Velrin stood at the speaker's podium. I come before you with a petition, Velrin said. His voice was being translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. The Terrans saved my people when no one else would. They deserve recognition. They deserve a place among us. An alien that looked like a walking tree spoke up. The Terrans are children. They have barely left their own star system. They know nothing of galactic politics or ancient customs. They know compassion, Velrin replied. They know courage. Is that not more important than age? A creature made of crystalline structures chimed in its language. The translator converted it. How do we know this was not a trick? Perhaps the Terrans created the gray bloom themselves, then pretended to cure it, to make themselves look good. Velrin's skin flushed with anger. In Rylon culture, this was a serious insult. I watched my world die for 3 years. I watched billions of my people turn to crystal dust. The Terrans had nothing to do with our tragedy. They simply answered when we called for help. Something the rest of you refused to do. The assembly chamber grew quiet. Another voice spoke, gentle and wise. It came from an elderly alien with tentacles instead of arms. I believe the Rylons. I believe the Terrans acted with honor. I vote to grant them provisional membership in the assembly. Let them prove themselves. The debate lasted for hours. Some species supported humanity. Others opposed it. Some abstained. But in the end, by a narrow margin, Earth was granted provisional membership in the Galactic Assembly. On Earth, people celebrated. Humanity had joined the galactic community. But Minho and his crew knew the truth. The hard work was just beginning. Minho was promoted to admiral. Earth Command wanted to create a new fleet, dedicated to helping other species. They called it the Mercy Fleet, and they wanted Minho to lead it. The Times Horizon's Promise Times will be the flagship, the Earth Command Director told him. You will have 5 other ships under your command. Your mission is to respond to distress calls anywhere in the galaxy. Why me? Minho asked. Because you already proved you can do it. You saved an entire species. Now we want you to save more. Minho thought about that responsibility. It was huge, terrifying, but also right. I will do it, he said. But I want my original crew. Hana, Taehyun, Sora, Yuna, Junho. All of them. Done. Within a month. The Mercy Fleet was assembled. 6 ships, each crewed by volunteers who wanted to make a difference. They gathered at a space station near Earth for their official launch. Eun-ha-yoon, Earth's new ambassador to the Galactic Assembly, spoke at the ceremony. We are not doing this for glory or for power. We are doing this because it is right. Because someone needs to care. Because every life in this galaxy has value. The crowd cheered. People from all over Earth had come to watch. This was humanity's moment. Their chance to show the galaxy who they were. But not everyone was celebrating. Sora stood alone in the Times Horizons Promise Asterisk's laboratory, reading reports. Since the news of the Rylon rescue had spread, Earth had received 43 distress calls. 43 different species, all facing impossible problems. A star about to go supernova, threatening an inhabited planet. A plague spreading through a space station. A ship trapped in a black hole's gravity well. A species slowly freezing to death as their sun dimmed. Problems that seemed impossible to solve. How are we supposed to help everyone? Sora wondered aloud. Minho entered the laboratory. We cannot help everyone. But we can help some. And that is better than helping none. Is it enough? It has to be. The first mission of the Mercy Fleet took them to a species called the Novan. They were aquatic beings whose ocean world was being poisoned by volcanic eruptions. The Novans were dying in the toxic water. Taehyun designed filters using Earth technology. They cleaned the water faster than the volcanoes could poison it. Within 2 weeks, the crisis was over. The Novans thanked humanity by sharing their knowledge of underwater construction. It was technology Earth had never imagined. The second mission was harder. A species called the Kelrath faced a plague. Yuna worked day and night, but she could not find a cure. The best she could do was slow the disease down, buy them time. It was not a perfect victory, but it saved thousands of lives. Not every mission succeeded. The Mercy Fleet arrived too late to save the inhabitants of a mining colony. A structural failure had destroyed their habitat. By the time the human ships arrived, everyone was dead. Minho stood in the wreckage, looking at the bodies. Junho put a hand on his shoulder. We tried. That is all anyone can do. But Minho felt the weight of every life he could not save. It was heavy. It hurt. Hana found him that night, staring out at the stars. You cannot save everyone, Captain. No one can. I know. But I wish I could. That is what makes you a good person. You care. You try. Even when it is hard. Even when it hurts. The months passed. The Mercy Fleet helped species after species. Some problems were easy to solve. Others were harder. Some were impossible. But always, humanity tried. Word spread across the galaxy. When the Terrans arrived, things got better. They brought new ideas, new technology, new hope. They never asked for payment. They never demanded anything in return. They just helped. More species joined the Galactic Assembly because of humanity's example. Species that had been isolated decided to reach out. Species that had been enemies started talking. The galaxy was changing, becoming more connected, more cooperative. Bora Jung, a historian, wrote a book about these events. She called it The Answer. It became the most widely read book in galactic history. In her book, she wrote, "For thousands of years, species in this galaxy lived separate lives. They traded, When it benefited them, they allied. When threatened. But they did not help each other simply because it was right. Then the Terrans came. They showed us a different way. They showed us that strength is not just military power or technological advancement. Strength is the willingness to help those who cannot help themselves. Strength is compassion. Quote, back on Rylon Prime, the world had healed completely. The gray wasteland was gone, replaced by forests and fields. The population had grown back to 1 billion and was still rising. Ashara now led the Rylon Science Council. She had dedicated her life to studying Earth biology. She wanted to understand the force that had saved her world. One day, she received a message. Sora was coming to visit. Along with the rest of the original crew, Ashara felt joy fill her entire being. When the Times Horizons Promise Times landed, Ashara was waiting. She and Sora embraced. It had been 6 months, but it felt like years. Look at your world, Sora said, looking around. It is beautiful. Thanks to you, Ashara replied. Thanks to us, Sora corrected. We worked together. That is how it should be. They walked through the new forests together, talking about science and life and the future. Velrin joined them, along with Minho. I have news, Velrin said. The Assembly wants to create a permanent alliance. The Rylons and the Terrans, working together to help others. Minho smiled. I think that is a good idea. That night, they held a celebration. Humans and Rylons ate together. Though their foods were completely different, they shared stories and songs. They talked about the past and dreamed about the future. A young Rylon child approached Hana. The child had been born during the Grey Bloom crisis. In the darkest days. Now, she was healthy and happy. Are you really the ones who saved us? The child asked. Hana knelt down. We helped, but your people saved yourselves too. You survived when it seemed impossible. You kept hoping when there was no reason to hope. That is true strength. The child thought about that. Can I be like you when I grow up? Can I help people too? Of course, Hana said. The galaxy needs all the help it can get. As the celebration continued, Minho stood apart for a moment, looking at the stars. So many stars. So many worlds. So many people who might need help someday. Unha Yun's voice came through his communicator. Admiral, we have received a new distress call. A species in the Andromeda sector. Their star is dying. Minho looked at his crew. They were laughing with the Rylons, enjoying the celebration. They deserved rest. They deserved peace. But he knew what their answer would be. He walked over to them. We have a new mission, he said. Taehyun stood up immediately. When do we leave? Tomorrow. We will be ready, Sora said. Yuna nodded. Someone needs our help. That is all the reason we need. Junho checked his equipment. I will make sure the ship is prepared. Hana smiled. Another chance to make history. Velrin approached them. You are leaving so soon? People need us, Minho said. We cannot ignore that. Velrin made a gesture of deep respect. Then go. Help them as you helped us. Show the galaxy what it means to care. The next morning, the Times Horizons Promise Times rose into the sky. Rylons gathered to watch it go. They sang a farewell song, a promise to remember. Inside the ship, Minho sat in his captain's chair. His crew surrounded him, ready for whatever came next. Course set for the Andromeda sector, Hana reported. All systems ready, Tae-Yun confirmed. Medical bay prepared for anything, Yuna added. Security teams standing by, Junho said. Sora looked at the star charts. Another impossible problem. Another chance to prove that nothing is impossible, Minho smiled. Then, let us go answer another call for help. That is what we do. That is who we are. The Times Horizons Promise Times jumped to FTL speed. vanishing into the stars. Behind it, the Rylon world grew smaller. But the impact of what had happened there grew larger every day. Humanity had shown the galaxy something important. They had shown that kindness was not weakness. That helping others made you stronger, not weaker. That the measure of a civilization was not its weapons or its wealth, but its willingness to care for those in need. Other species began to follow humanity's example. More rescue missions, more cooperation, more compassion. The galaxy was changing. And it all started with a simple choice. Someone had called for help, and humanity had answered. That was the day history was made.